Welcome back, everyone, to the Malaysia Money Matters show. It's the 11th of April, 2025.
Great to be here.
We've got quite a collection of articles you send over covering finance, the economy.
Yeah,
Lots happening.
absolutely. So today we're going to dive right in, unpack what's going on, especially with Malaysian companies first.
Okay, then we'll look broader. International scene.
Exactly. We'll touch on the global economic stuff, politics, definitely the U.S. trade situation, which is developing rapidly.
Keep it brief, focus on the impact for us here.
That's the plan. And finally, we'll pick out what we think is the most interesting news of the day.
Sounds good. Let's kick off with Malaysian company news. First up, Chin Hin Group. AMBank's provided quite a bit of financing.
Yeah, RM 307 million. It's going to two subsidiaries, Arisha and Magna.
And what's that money earmarked for? Mostly property.
Primarily, yes.
Yeah.
For Arisha, it's funding the Arisha Residences development down in Sungai Besi. That's got a pretty high gross development value, around RM 467 million. And Magna share, that's for a mixed-use project in Bandar Kinrara. Think, residential towers plus some retail space.
Right, but you said not just property.
Correct. Part of the funding is also heading towards civil infrastructure work
Whereabouts?
in Sabah and Sarawak. So the idea is to boost connectivity, support economic growth over there. It's sort of, broader infrastructure investment too.
Got it. Okay, moving on. HeiTech Padu. They've signed a couple of MOUs related to AI and cloud services.
That's right. Two memoranda of understanding. It signals their push into this AI computing space.
So the first one is with Huawei and MYEG. What's the focus?
Yeah, that one's about collaborating on cloud and AI-driven smart government services. So HeiTech Padu and MYEG bring the use cases, the application scenarios.
They know what government services need.
Exactly. And Huawei provides the AI platform, the technology. It's not exclusive for now, but they do plan to formalize a contract later. Huawei is tech partner, HeiTech Padu is the industry partner.
Interesting. Could lead to maybe more efficient government services eventually.
That's the hope, right? Using AI to streamline things.
And the second MOU HeiTech Padu signed.
That one's a strategic partnership with Maiyue Technology, which is listed in Hong Kong.
And their goal?
They want to build an AI computing power center together for both industry clients and individual users too.
So, like providing raw AI processing power.
Pretty much. They're still negotiating the details, investment levels, profit sharing, who does what. But it's a significant step towards building more AI infrastructure here.
Okay. Next, Hibiscus Petroleum. They got a big win, a 20-year extension on a production sharing contract.
Yeah, really long extension for their PM3 commercial arrangement area, the CAA. It now runs until the end of 2047.
Wow. So what does that unlock for them?
It basically enables their whole PM3 hub master plan. This means drilling new wells in that area, but also, and this is key,
What's that?
they might be able to process gas from other nearby fields, like PKNB and PM327, where Hibiscus also has stakes, using the existing PM3 CAA gas facilities.
Ah, so they don't need to build entirely new processing plants for that gas.
Exactly. That's the potential big advantage.
Yeah.
It could mean significant capital expenditure savings.
Makes sense. And more efficient operations overall.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Using those existing facilities more effectively.
Mm.
The PM3 CAA itself currently produces about 11,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day.
And there's still potential there.
Oh, yeah. Petronas estimates up to 60 million barrels of oil equivalent remaining. And looking way ahead, there's even talk it could become a carbon capture hub.
Okay, a fascinating long-term view. Now, shifting gears a bit, some legal trouble. MSM Malaysia Holdings is being sued.
Yes, by Ranhill Water Technologies, which is part of Ranhill Utilities. It's over an industrial effluent treatment project in Johor that got terminated.
What's the background?
Well, MSM Johor hired RWT back in June 2022 for a plant upgrade, about RM 6.1 million. But then MSM terminated the contract in July 2024.
Why?
MSM alleges RWT failed to complete the work. RWT disputes this, naturally.
So RWT is suing for...
They're claiming about RM 2.79 million in outstanding payments, plus more for extra work they say they did, damages. And they want the court to say the termination was wrong.
And MSM's response.
They've hit back with a counterclaim, seeking up to RM 4.4 million for costs to fix or replace the work, and also estimated losses of nearly RM 28 million per month since the termination.
Per month. Wow, that's a huge number.
It is. It highlights how disruptive they feel this has been. It's a messy dispute, clearly.
Okay, let's hope they can resolve that. Now, back to infrastructure. The Penang International Airport expansion looks like Package 3 is coming up for bids.
Yes, CIMB Securities thinks the big construction players, Gamuda, IJM, MRCB, Suncon, could all be interested. Bidding might happen in May.
And package 3 is what exactly? The main terminal.
Pretty much. Construction of a new terminal building and renovating the existing one, plus all the related infrastructure, services, interior work. It's a big chunk, estimated around RM 1.2 billion.
Any potential frontrunners? You mentioned Gamuda before in relation to airports.
Yeah, Gamuda has experience, like with Hamad International in Qatar. Plus, they're already doing that land reclamation for Silicon Island nearby, so maybe some logistical advantages.
Right, synergies.
Could be. And Anzhou Resources, the steel company, they have a facility nearby too, so maybe they're well-positioned for steel supply contracts. It'll be interesting to watch.
Definitely. Okay, we also have an IPO coming up, West River.
Yeah, an engineering firm. They're launching on the ACE market, offering shares at 39 cents each.
Aiming to raise how much?
Up to about RM 41.85 million. It's a mix of new shares and existing shares being offered.
And the funds raised will go towards?
Growth plans, basically. Buying land, building a new factory, paying down some debt, working capital, and covering the IPO costs themselves. The offer closes April 17th. Listing planned for early May.
Okay, one for investors to look at. And finally, on the Malaysian front, the stock market itself. The FBM KLCI had a huge jump on April 10th.
It really did. Surged nearly 4.5%, closed at 1,463.13.
Adding billions to the market cap.
Roughly RM 73 billion added to Bursa Malaysia's overall market value in just one day.
Wow. What was behind that? Just general optimism?
It looks like it was mostly a relief rally, driven by that big news coming out of the U.S.
Tariffs.
Exactly. The pause announced on most new tariffs seemed to really boost investor confidence here.
Okay, perfect segue then. Let's talk international news, and clearly the U.S. tariffs are the main story. President Trump announces tariffs, then almost immediately pauses them for 90 days for most countries, including Malaysia, but hikes them massively for China.
Yeah, quite the whirlwind. First, the threat of these reciprocal tariffs, then a quick pivot to a 90-day pause for 75 countries, back to a 10% baseline duty. But China gets hit immediately with 125% tariffs.
What was the initial reaction here in Malaysia? Panic.
Some disruption, definitely. We heard reports, some exporters, furniture, textiles, spare parts actually halted U.S. shipments because of the uncertainty.
But not everyone.
No. Interestingly, glove makers, semiconductor exporters, they reported no immediate delays.
Yeah.
Shows how it hits different sectors differently.
And the Malaysian government's take?
Cautious relief, I'd say. Prime Minister Anwar called it temporary release. Deputy Prime Minister Zafrul welcomed the pause, said Malaysia is assessing things, and feels we're in a decent position to negotiate during this 90-day window.
How about the U.S. Fed? They must be watching this closely. What are they thinking?
Well, they're likely worried about the impact on U.S. growth, Trump's trade policies causing drag. But they're also signaling no quick interest rate cuts.
Because of inflation fears from the tariffs?
Exactly, especially those massive tariffs on Chinese goods. They expect that to push inflation up. So the Fed's kind of caught in the middle, balancing growth worries with inflation worries. Uncertainty is still high, despite the pause.
And the market reaction globally, we saw the KLCI jump.
Yeah, markets rallied pretty much everywhere. A big relief rally, stocks went up, and the ringgit strengthened too. It just shows how sensitive markets are to these big trade policy shifts.
What about ASEAN as a bloc? How did they respond?
They acted quickly. Economic ministers had a special meeting, and they unanimously rejected the whole basis for the U.S. tariffs. The original proposed tariffs were pretty high for some ASEAN nations, remember.
So are they planning retaliation?
No, they've agreed retaliation isn't the answer. They want to engage constructively with the U.S. There's even a special ASEAN leaders meeting planned to figure out a unified path forward.
Interesting. And is Malaysia also talking to China about this?
Yes. Ministers from both countries have discussed strengthening economic ties and how to respond together to the U.S. moves. China's called it unilateral bullying, so they're definitely looking for partners like Malaysia.
What about Malaysian businesses themselves, the manufacturers?
The Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers, FMM, they're urging the government to really use this 90-day pause effectively. They want decisive action to protect industry competitiveness.
Like what specifically?
Things like sector-specific relief measures, maybe deferring the planned SST expansion, setting up a national supply chain council, even an Asian-level one. They're also worried about, goods being redirected here from countries still facing high tariffs.
That makes sense. A potential flood of imports. We also saw U.S. inflation data for March, right before the tariffs really changed.
Yeah, and interestingly, underlying inflation actually cooled a bit in March. But that was before these latest tariff actions would really show up. So the next few months of inflation data will be very telling.
Okay. Let's briefly touch on oil prices. They've been volatile too.
Very much so. Swings tied to the tariff news, OPEC plus output plans. It's been a bumpy ride. Goldman Sachs even put out a note saying Saudi Arabia's budget deficit could really spike because of the recent price drops.
Potentially impacting their big projects.
Could do, yeah. Might mean more borrowing or even cuts to those mega projects.
What's the Malaysian angle on lower oil prices? Any upside?
Well, BIMB Securities suggested it might create a strategic window for Malaysia to finally proceed with On-95 subsidy rationalization, maybe mid-2025.
But politics could interfere. The Sabah election.
That's always a factor, yeah. The timing is sensitive. Separately, on palm oil, the deputy minister doesn't expect a huge disruption from U.S. tariffs directly, since the U.S. is a small market for our palm oil, only about 1%.
But sentiment could be it.
Possibly. The focus remains on diversifying markets anyway. Oil prices themselves, Brent crude, it recovered a bit on the tariff pause news, but then slipped again, still down significantly over the week. Fears about the U.S.-China trade war escalating and recession risks are still weighing heavily.
Right. Okay, a couple more international points. Malaysia-China digital cooperation seems to be deepening.
Yes, quite a bit. 6 MOUs signed recently between Malaysian and Chinese tech firms and universities.
The focusing on?
Things like AI, cloud computing, digital infrastructure. Specific areas mentioned were sovereign AI cloud, smart logistics, AI and e-commerce, AI for government services. A clear push for closer tech ties.
And quickly on Sabah's economy, looked like decent investment numbers.
Yeah, RM 6.5 billion total investment in 2024. Manufacturing was a big chunk of that. State revenue collection was also strong. They've also introduced new state sales taxes on things like silica sand, palm oil biomass exports, and mined gold silver to diversify revenue.
And focusing on downstream activities.
Yeah, exactly. Developing more value-added industries under the 13th Malaysia Plan.
Finally, Malaysia and Indonesia talking palm oil cooperation, despite being competitors.
Yes, Indonesia's finance minister Sri Mulyani suggested more complementarity in trade overall. She emphasized the need for both countries, as the world's top producers, to work together on promoting sustainability and countering negative campaigns, especially in Europe.
Makes sense to present a united front there.
Definitely. Collaboration on sustainability standards and messaging could be beneficial for both.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground. So pulling it all together, what stands out to you as the most, well, exciting or significant development today?
For me, it really has to be that dramatic swing in U.S. tariff policy. The whiplash, from announcement to pause, but keeping the pressure firmly on China. And the immediate, quite strong reaction we saw in the markets.
Yeah, the KLCI jump, the ringgit strengthening. It shows just how impactful those decisions are, even a temporary pause.
Exactly. It's thrown everything into a state of flux. It creates this window, this 90-day period, which is an opportunity for Malaysia, sure, for negotiation.
But also huge uncertainty, right?
Absolutely. It's only temporary relief for most exporters, and that baseline 10% tariff is still there. Plus, the massive hike on China creates all sorts of potential ripple effects for global supply chains.
So the big question is, what happens after 90 days?
Precisely. What does this mean for long-term business planning? How should Malaysia strategically use this window? Which sectors are actually better off, maybe from trade diversion, and which are still really vulnerable? It's a very fluid situation.
Definitely one we'll need to keep tracking closely in the coming weeks and months. It feels like the ground is constantly shifting.
It really does. Constant vigilance needed.
Well, that is unfortunately all the time we have for today's deep dive into Malaysia's financial landscape. We hope this breakdown has helped clarify some of these major developments and what they might mean.
Yes, hope it was useful. And if you did find this analysis valuable and you want to keep up with all the forces shaping Malaysia's economy,
then make sure you subscribe to the Malaysia Money Matters podcast.
We'll be back soon with more insights to help you navigate the often complex financial world. Thanks for tuning in. Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you would like a deeper dive into all the investment opportunities from today's news, subscribe to my newsletter at moneymatters.substack.com. I will be sharing a deeper analysis of the key investment opportunities from today's news, including what makes these opportunities stand out and how they fit into the broader market trends. By subscribing to the Malaysia Money Matters newsletter, you will also get exclusive insights on my watch list and portfolio and fundamental reports on Malaysian listed companies.